Hello ladies and gents, and welcome to the first Star Wars Rebels recap on the Legacy Brick Studios channel. Now, we are focused on the season premiere of Star Wars Rebels Spark of Rebellion. And here we're going to be focused on the characters, the different species in the show, the planets in the show that we visit, the vehicles we encounter, everything in between as well in the story. So, without further ado, let's get started with Spark of Rebellion. Now, the first character we are introduced to in the opening sequence is Ezra Bridger. Now, a lot of people are thrown off with this character just because he looks like Aladdin from the Disney movies, and this is something that I'm sure a lot of people have a problem with. I've heard it on the internet multiple times. And another thing is his hair and eye color is purple. Now that's kind of a little odd as well, and it's un-Star Wars like to a point, but I've seen it different times in the Clone Wars series. I've seen it with Prime Minister Almec. I think he had purple eyes, so it's not a really big deal to me. I think it's just kind of the hues in it and stuff with the lighting sometimes that makes it look purple. I don't know. But another thing that I think people are thrown off with is the fact that instead of using a blaster, he uses a slingshot. But personally, I think it's pretty sweet. He does kill a few stormtroopers with it, and it's awesome, I think. But that's just my personal opinion, and everybody's entitled to their own. But early off, we find that this character, he's roaming on this big planet of Lothal, with TIE fighters flying around and Imperial Star Destroyers flying around over his head, and he lives in this big, what looks to be a radio tower type place. It is just called Ezra's apartment, and I'll get to that later of what I think about it. But he lives in this big world, and he's just a small part of it. He's just this street kid who steals from people and who rips off the Imperials and collects stormtrooper helmets, and I think that's really cool. It's like we're living through his eyes in the series. He's experiencing all these different things, like when he's in space, he's never been in space before. When he sees a lightsaber or hears Jedi, stuff that he's only heard rumors about, we are seeing that through his eyes, and it's pretty cool to see. Like when he picks up Kanan's lightsaber for the first time, it's awesome. We see it through his eyes, and he is excited by it, and he doesn't know what it is at first, I don't think. The Force is something that he only experiences minimal, and I'll get to that in a minute as well. But next character we have is Kanan Jarrus. Now, what do I think about him? I think he's a pretty cool character, and that's because of how brilliantly mystic he is with the ways of the Force, and how he and Ezra just click kind of from the start. They are like, he's the mentor and Ezra's the Padawan, and it's awesome. And even the Imperials pick up on that before Ezra is even Kanan's apprentice, and that's just really cool how it all just fits together in this storyline, and I love it. And I hope that we can learn more about Kanan's past, because there are some gaps that just we need filled in. And it was kind of like that for the Clone Wars, but I hope that with this character, Kanan Jarrus, that they really don't give us a whole lot of insight into him right off the bat. I hope they wait and kind of space it out with how much we learn about him, because I hope they can hold back with that. I really do. Next we have Hera Syndulla, and what's really neat about her is her last name, in fact, which makes me wonder, is she related to Cham Syndulla from Star Wars The Clone Wars? And I want to say yes. These are the same people making Rebels as the same people that made The Clone Wars, so you know what, Dave Filoni and company probably did this on purpose, and we're probably going to see speckles of her past sprinkled in there. And I love that. I love the intertwining saga that Star Wars has to offer within every aspect of the movies and TV shows. It's all interwoven together, and that's just amazing how they can do that. But aside from that, basically if you're not seeing a lot of her, it's probably because she's just flying this ship. And that's kind of funny to think of. Like, there's not a lot of promotional things with Hera, just because she's the pilot, and we don't see a whole lot of her. Because of that, she's not on the battlefield with Kanan and Ezra and Zeb and Sabine, because she's too busy flying the ship. Same with Chopper. But her character is pretty good as well, because her and Kanan kind of have a past together, it seems like. In this, she calls him Love. In the little mini episode thing, we seen her and him kinda going in for a kiss, and then Chopper pops up. So they definitely have something going on between them, and if there is a romance, that's it right there. But another thing I find interesting about Hera is the fact that when we started getting concepts of her, they start out like in the early stages of her as being a little kid, what it looks like, and then it shifts to a more refined version of what she would look like, maybe with different Twi'lek hair tails, and then we see the final version of her in the concept stage. So it's really cool just to see those three pieces of art. I thought I'd throw those in there. But another thing about Hera that we have to keep in mind is the fact that her and Ezra, they're like, she's like his mom. That's what it kind of reminds me of. There's a motherly aspect to it. I don't know why. I'm just starting to feel that she can feel what's going on with him, and he reluctantly takes her advice and takes her orders, stuff like that. That's what it kind of reminds me of. Maybe that'll become more of a big sister thing as it goes on, but right now to me it's more motherly. That's what I'm feeling from it. But I'm not saying she's his mom. I'm saying that's what their relationship's gonna be like. Excuse me. So yeah, that is Hera, and moving on to Sabine. And Sabine's character is also pretty darn interesting. She's an artist at heart. She has to make sure her explosions are on point and they have to look great, and she even like brushes out this can of dust, spray paint, explosives, I don't know what it is, right before they leave an Imperial Star Destroyer. And when they leave, she pulls out the trigger and boom, it blows up. But she did it in the form of their symbol, their rebel symbol, which I think is really cool. Personally, she wears it on her chest plate, and Kanan wears a different type of symbol on his shoulder pad, which I find very interesting. And together they kind of make up the rebel symbol. I like how that goes hand in hand, like the different parts make it up. That's pretty interesting, I think. But on top of that, she's a Mandalorian warrior, basically. And what I think would be awesome is if we find out that she's a descendant from Bo-Katan, or the Owl Troopers is what they were called in the Clone Wars, or at least what I called them. But you know, that would be pretty sweet. Just another thing to tie in with the Clone Wars. And I also think it would be pretty cool, just on the line of that, if Kanan was a descendant from the Onderon people from that arc in the Clone Wars, with tipping points and soft war and all those episodes. But that's just a side note. But yeah, really awesome character, awesome helmet as well. Her armor is very artsy. You can see she's just splattered paint on it, and it looks pretty cool from my opinion. But next up we have Zeb, and he's the muscle of the group. He is like the Chewbacca of the group, but instead he can talk, and it's kind of cool because he is based off of early Ralph McQuarrie designs of Chewbacca. Now, a lot of people like this, and a lot of people think it's kind of a ripoff. I'm one of those people in the middle. I think they could have gone with something different. I don't know. But I still do like his character model. I think it's very well done. I also like his staff. His weapon is pretty awesome. Turns into a blaster and a kind of like a Magna Guard staff is what it is. But that's not really what it is. I forget what it would be called. But it's a pretty cool weapon he has there. And his relationship with Ezra is more like a big brother, I'm gonna beat you up, I'm gonna throw you outside, don't get dead is one of his other lines that I find very funny. He does also bring a lot of humor to these episodes, and it's awesome to see that in Star Wars, because in the Clone Wars it lacked humor, it did lack humor, and that's something I kind of missed. Every once in a while you get a little bit of that, but Zeb brings a lot to it. They call him a hairless Wookiee, and he pretends to be a Wookiee slave, and it's awesome. They try to trick the Imperials, but there are those points where you end up laughing out loud because of it, and it's just like this silliness that, you know, you wonder why you're laughing at it, but it is just funny. That's one thing with these episodes. Ezra, he's another kind of funny character. At one point, the Agent Kallus asks him his name, and he says that it's Jabba the Hutt. You know, it's hilarious, but I mean, hilarious to the Star Wars fan at least. But Zeb is a pretty cool character. I think the character design is pretty cool as well. Except there's one thing I would change about it, and that is his eyes. They are humongous, like green tennis balls peering at you. I would change that about it. That's the only thing. So yeah, Zeb, I hope to see his character grow with Ezra, because at one point he does like seem like he has a heart. So now moving on to Chopper, and he is a very interesting little droid. He's kind of like, if R2's the dog, he's the cat. That's how people working on this series have put it, and that is very true. Chopper, I love the animations that he does with his little arms that come out of the top of his head, and his wheel from the bottom. I love that, and he also even has a jetpack coming out of his body as well, which is really cool. I like to see that, and I hope that we get to see a lot more of him. He does bring some humor to the group as well, just with those little animations and stuff. It does kind of make you giggle. But yeah, I hope to see him a lot more next episode with R2 and 3PO. So yeah, I'll talk about him more then. But now, moving on to another interesting character, Agent Kallus. Now, this character, from the start, I was shocked to see how un-Imperial-like he is. Because, you know, a regular Imperial would be, he would want to, you know, just blast your head off. Excuse that, but he would. He's not like Tarkin. Tarkin is ruthless, and Agent Kallus is not like that at all. He shows that he even has a heart when Ezra is in prison. He just kind of asks him his name and states his business and kind of brushes some dust off of Ezra and walks out the door. Like, that is not Imperial-like to me. I could even see him joining the rebels if the Imperials did something to take him off, which is really, really interesting how maybe his character could evolve over the course of the series. But he does do a good job portraying this Imperial-like presence on the battlefield and commanding these stormtroopers as well. So, moving on to some other characters, you might not know them very well by their names, but it is the two Imperial officers in the beginning of the episode. Remember, we are going over all of these names, all of them, no matter who they are. So there's actually three. First off, when they're beating up the, not really beating up, but stealing the Yogans from the vendor, which is the little fruits, by the way, that's the Yogan. The two Imperial officers are Commandant Cumberlane Oresco and Taskmaker Miles Grint. And we also have an Imperial officer by the name of Yogsar Least. And this is the guy that Miles Grint and Cumberlane Oresco go to after Ezra has stolen their communicator and calmed over the radio that Least needs to see them ASAP. There's something going down. which is a huge setup, and it's just so he can steal some Yogans and save the marketplace dude. So yes, those are our 3 new Imperial officers that we see this episode. And before we go any further, I just want to address how I feel about the new Stormtrooper look. And from the start, from just seeing pictures of them in the very beginning, I love it. I absolutely am in love with it. When these guys come out in Lego, I have to get as many as I can get, which is great because there's a new battle pack coming out, but that's in my last video that I showed you, and I will be doing an analysis on that, by the way. But these Stormtroopers, I love them. They're awesome looking. They look exactly like how I would envision a Ralph McQuarrie Stormtrooper to look like in a sketchbook or something. They look awesome. They look shiny, new, and I love it. Now, the things about these Stormtroopers are, there's a lot that actually die in this episode. I've heard that there's 33 that are killed or brutally wounded to the severe injury. So those of you who think this is a kid's show, you're mistaken. But these Stormtroopers, I have one problem with them, one beef about them, and that is they remind me of how the battle droids were in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and it ticks me off. Stormtroopers, at this point, are still clones. They're still clones, most of them, or at least half of them. Maybe not all of them, but there's a good amount that are clones, I think, that are still alive. I hope. That's just what I'm thinking. But see, here the thing is, they act so dumb. They're the dumbest Stormtroopers around. And they even act like battle droids. Why I think that is because Agent Callus, in the very end, he just kicks one off the edge and he screams. You know, it's like, what the heck? What the heck? But one thing I did like about Stormtroopers, real quick footnote, is that they do use the Wilhelm scream one time in this episode, and you always have to have the Wilhelm screen. It's just, you have to have it. It's awesome. But I know there's some people who don't like that, but I do. So next character we see is, oh, his name, Cicatro Vizago. That's all I'm doing right now. See, I can't do it. But he is, I'm not sure exactly what his species is. Oh no, it's Deveron. Yeah, that's the species, Deveron. And he reminds me of the guy from Mos Eisley Cantina. But the thing about him is he's kind of a betrayer of sorts, kind of like a Hondo Inaka. Even though it does say in this episode that the rebels didn't really think that he betrayed them. He didn't really know. He just gave them the information. So I'm not sure. I'm not going to go into every detail about this episode story, just because I'm hoping that you guys watch the episode and you guys already know kind of what I'm talking about. But he does have these bodyguards, and the thing about them is these are Ralph McQuarrie designs for IG-88, and it is awesome to see these guys. This is the model here is IGRM. So yeah, that's for you hardcore fans that want to remember that like me. But it's just awesome to see the IG-88 design in Star Wars Rebels from Ralph McQuarrie, what he gave to us. I love seeing that, even though some people like think it's a ripoff. This is one of those things where it is so jammed in there that most people don't even recognize it, and only the hardcore fans do, and that's something that me as a hardcore fan likes to see. That is kind of jammed in the background there. I like those little Easter eggs. But yeah, Vizago, he is a pretty interesting character. I hope to see a lot more of him throughout the series, kind of like a Hondo Inaka, like I mentioned before. So next up we have the Wookiees, and these kind of threw people for a loop just by their design and how they look. But here we have Wolf Waro. He is throwing a stormtrooper up in the air. That's who he is, Wolf Waro. And then his son, Kitwar. I'm not sure if his son or his daughter, probably his son. But kind of looks like a little plush Wookiee, maybe. But you do feel bad for him in this episode because he is chased by a stormtrooper and Ezra goes after him. So you kind of do feel bad for little Kitwar. But these Wookiees, a lot of people don't think they look like Wookiees by just their design. I'm fine with it personally, but I'm sure a lot of people are thrown for a loop. But yeah, I like their cameo, I guess you would say, in this episode. Because you know, like even Yoda says that you have to have good relations with the Wookiees. They're always there to help you, pretty much. So next off, I want to go over some of the designs for the planets and places that we see in this episode, some of the vehicles as well. And here we have an early Ralph McQuarrie design for what would become Lothal, and this seems like a really early design right here. And the next one's more what it would look like in the series. And then I like the look personally. I think it was originally a design for Alderaan, I'm pretty sure. Not 100% though, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And then here we have another closer look into these cone-shaped structures. I think they're pretty cool. I like how they showed it in this episode. I like that they are using the McQuarrie designs. I just hope they don't overuse them. I'm hoping that, honestly. I mean, it was okay for this first episode because it's the movie pretty much for the series, kind of like how the Clone Wars had its own movie. But here we have another picture of Lothal, and not sure if it's Lothal or Lothal. I'm gonna call it both. But here we have a look at the city, a concept of it. Not a McQuarrie concept, just a regular one from the series. And I like the design. Half of it's kind of like pristine and you know, white and whatnot, and the other half is like a dark gray, almost a black, because of the factories that the Empire has imposed on this planet. And I like that little twist on it, what the Empire is actually doing and how it affects them visually. And here we have another picture of the planes with a look at Ezra's apartment. Now before we get into that, I want to just go over these TIE fighters that we see in the series. I love their look. Their wings are a little shorter than a regular TIE fighter, and I kind of like that. But one thing I did learn about these TIE fighters is the two red dots under the cockpit. I never knew this, but those are actually what makes the TIE fighter shoot its lasers and stuff like that. I never knew that before until they really zoomed in on it in this episode in one of the scenes, and I thought that was kind of cool that I've never really noticed that before. But here's a look at Ezra's apartment, and I like its design, even though it doesn't really state how he gets up to the top. I'm pretty sure there's like a little elevator in the bottom there or something, but I like how it's kind of like on the outskirts of town and whatnot. Kind of cool. But I'm not sure if it's an apartment or looks like a radio tower almost, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is, maybe a communication station. But he lives up there, and that's his little apartment. And here is actually a look at the interior of it. I like how he collects all these stormtrooper helmets and whatnot. Kind of reminds you of like how you would be as a kid in this universe. I mean, what kid wouldn't want a stormtrooper helmet to wear and whatnot? But I like the designs, kind of run down looking. I don't know, that's kind of how I expected it to be. But here's another design of Lothal in the streets and stuff, and how it would look populated. And this is actually from an early concept art. You can even see like the little lettering on it, Lucasfilm, all that. But I hope I don't get in trouble for that. I hope these images aren't copyrighted. I'm just saying I got them from Google Images. They aren't mine. These are a property of Lucasfilm and Disney. So I hope I don't get copyright infringement. But this was from a concept of how the episode would go from the beginning. There would be, instead of a speeder bike chase, a chase through the streets with Zeb and Ezra climbing on all these buildings and whatnot. But I like the direction they went instead with the speeders personally. And instead, Ezra watches from the top the introduction of these characters, and I think they did it okay. It wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst, but kind of them patting their blasters and whatnot. I mean, it was kind of a little weird, but I mean, it worked. I might have done it a little bit differently if I was in charge, but that's a different story. But here we have another look in the streets, kind of all these different posters and propaganda, maybe even just like splattered on the walls. And here's another picture of the different variants of them. They're all the same, I think. They're just kind of changed a little with the color. So I like all those little details they throw in there, and you get to really see them and pick them out during the episode, in fact. So I like that they do that, and I hope they keep doing that with the little details. That's what kind of makes the episodes. So here we have a look at Tarkin Town, and basically Tarkin came in. We hear mention of him coming in and throwing all these farmers out of their basically houses and arresting them, and it kind of does signify the oppression of the Empire once again. And the design for Tarkin Town is very, very, very run down looking, kind of like maybe like an enslavement camp almost, but not really. But I like how they did it. I like their design. And here we have a picture of them delivering the crates to the citizens of Tarkin Town. And that's not the real town, the name, but I think that's just like what they call it. So, also these crates that they're carrying, one thing you might notice is the red crates are foods and whatnot, and the gray crates are weapons. So if you're wondering the difference between the two, that's it right there. But here we have a design of the ship we will be seeing throughout the entirety of the series, the Ghost. And I love this design, guys. I couldn't be happier with it. At first I was a little leery of it, but now I really like it. It's grown on me, and I need to pick it up in Lego. I'm dying to get it, but I just haven't made the trip yet. I love its look, and it's gonna be the Millennium Falcon of the series, really. But there's also inside all these different vents and hatches that Ezra can climb through and whatnot, and it even has the Millennium Falcon checkerboard. Kind of a ripoff, not really, I don't know, I guess it's a game they play throughout the whole entire Star Wars saga. I guess you can make that a justification of it, but I really do like the design. There's different little things painted here and there. It looks like, and this is the mother ship for them. I love it. It does look kind of grungy, old looking, a very Star Wars used vehicle, and I'm sure that makes everybody like it even more, because that's kind of what we fell in love with the original trilogy. Here we have the next vehicle. I'm just gonna throw it in there because we're stating every little thing we find in this episode. It is the Wookie Gunship. Now, if you're wondering what that little actual name is for it, it's very, very hard to pronounce. Uztuk Anti-Slaver Ship. I'm thinking that's how you pronounce it. Uztuk, not sure, but that's what it is. I love the design. We're gonna see it in Lego. Maybe we'll see it again in the series. They already made the design. They made it in Lego, so we might see it again. That might be a signification of that. And the Wookiees did say if they ever need their help, they will be there for them. So here we have the next ship that the Imperials use, and that would be called an Imperial Freighter, or a Gauzentai class cruiser. Not sure if that's the how you pronounce it, but that's what it's really called, the Gauzentai class cruiser, or Imperial Freighter for short. But nice design. What I was surprised about was it is as big as the Ghost, just about, and I was very surprised to see that. I thought it would be a lot bigger from how it looks on the outside, but it is actually not. Very surprised to see that. Nice interior designs and all that too. But here we have a look at the speeder bike we see in this episode in the ATDP operator engineer guy, which I love his design as well, and I'll get to that in a minute. but speeder bikes sound and look awesome. Really does remind you of that episode 6 Endor battle in speeder bike chase with all the noises and whatnot. I love it. They did a fantastic job on them. You can even see in the episode, I just noticed this, the little brakes that they pull on it to stop it or whatever, and I love it. I really do like this speeder bike chase. But the ATDP driver he's an interesting character. Not character, but design. Not sure how I feel about it yet. Probably will grow on me. It's kind of a little weird looking. It's not exactly a stormtrooper helmet like we would normally see, like an AT-AT pilot. It's a different look to it, and it does look like an early design in the Empire, and I like that. I like how the design eventually evolves into what it is in the universe. But here we have another vehicle, the ATDP. Very interesting looking. Here is one of, I think this is a Ralph McQuarrie design, not sure, but it looks very cool, has a very interesting design, and even in the speeder bike chase, I love how like it turns its little head and looks at it at the bikes going down the long walkway. But I hope to see it a lot more in the series. I'm sure I will, but I'm wondering myself why we don't see this in like episode 4, 5, and 6. Like, why do we see the AT-ST instead? And I hope they kind of like maybe throw that little explanation in of that, because I was myself wondering what happened to it. Where's the AT-ST? But here we have another design, the Imperial Star Destroyer, and in the beginning sequence, which I want to talk about that really quick as well. There's no crawl, there's no Star Wars Rebels just appears on your screen like immediately. No, we see Ezra in his tower, and then we see this Imperial Star Destroyer in this photo flying over his head, and I don't like it. I hope they change it in the next episode for when the series actually starts. I hope we get some sort of what's happening, what's going on, because I love that with the Clone Wars. That was something that made it very Star Wars like. They even threw the blue letters in, but they threw in like a fortune cookie phrase. Like, that was very creative. I hope they do something like that for this series as well. Something a little different though. But I don't like it. It doesn't seem Star Wars to me when they don't throw in the crawl or throw in the Star Wars logo in the very beginning in the stars. No, we do see the logo though appear after the Star Destroyer flies overhead and Ezra speeds down the grass plains, but I don't know. But the Imperial Star Destroyer's design I do love. It is an awesome design, and it is very reminiscent of how it actually looks in the original trilogy, and I love it. It's very, very awesome, and it does seem very gigantic, and I like that fact. It seems very oppressive and whatnot, kind of like the Empire. But another place we visit in this episode is Kessel, the spice mines of Kessel, and we've only heard rumors of what that might look like from the original trilogy, Han Solo and stuff talking about it. And personally, I love this design. The exhaust vents coming out everywhere, kind of the oranges mixed into the sun. It looks great. I love it. And when we see it, it's almost like dusk is falling, or it's mid-morning or something like that. And I just love the look of it, personally. They couldn't have done a better job with it, I don't think. But, okay, that's places and vehicles. But now I want to talk about a little bit about the story and what's actually going on, some of the themes in this episode. So we have Ezra using the Force to do a number of different things in this episode. We have him jumping really high with this crate like we see. We have him jumping over stormtroopers and using his slingshot to zap them and kill them. And we also see him accidentally open this holocron that he steals from the ship. And I love, that's one of my favorite scenes in this episode, when he just uses the Force accidentally. He doesn't even know he's using it to open the holocron, and the whole sequence of them doing that, I love it how they kept it with how they actually did it in the Clone Wars. That's what actually happened, and that was seen in the episode Cargo of Doom with Cad Bane and Anakin and Ahsoka, if you were wondering. But also what we see is Obi-Wan appear through the holocron, and just that whole sequence and everything really made the episode even more special, because at first I didn't think we were going to see him anymore. I didn't think we were going to see the close-up of him, but then later on in the episode we do eventually see it in the end, and we get a good look at Obi-Wan, and here's some of the concepts for him. I just thought it'd be interesting for you guys to see how much it really does look like episode 3 Obi-Wan, just in this concept art look. I know some people might have been a little thrown off, but personally I love the design. I'm in love with it, and I hope we get to see Obi-Wan again in the series, just in these little ways. James Arnold Taylor did a perfect job voicing him as well, and it sounds like Obi-Wan from the Clone Wars again, and that's that little nod back to it. But in the end of the episode, Ezra does come to grips with his abilities and accepts the apprenticehood, I guess that's what you would call it, with Kanan, and it's great to see how this basically is the groundwork for what he needs to do to become a Jedi. And he passes all these different tests, like the holocron was a test, just to see if he was really force sensitive enough to become a Jedi. And I love how they threw all of that together in there to kind of mold Ezra into coming back with the rebels. But in the very end, we see a glimpse of the Inquisitor, and I love it. I love how they just throw that in there in the end and say, look what's coming for you. There's something even worse than Callus out there. And he looks very daunting, he looks very scary, and you almost fear for the rebels, because this guy's coming after him, and he's not happy. But yeah, that about wraps up this episode of Rebels Recap. And I hope you guys liked it a lot. I'm going to be doing this with every single episode. Now, here's the thing, guys. I need your feedback. Do you like the style I'm doing this in with all these different pictures and stuff? Or would you like me to see it done a different way? Would you like me to, like, have the episode playing and just me commentating on that and telling you all I know about it and what I think about it? Or would you like to see it in this format instead? I'd like to know what you would like to see. Maybe I could even do both if I find the time. But that would be kind of hard for me to do. So guys, thank you again for watching. If you liked it, please subscribe down below and like the video as well. That really gives me a lot of support. And also leave down in the comment section what you thought of it and how I could maybe do a better job. And get talking with other people about what you think this series entails for the lifetime of it, maybe. But thanks again, guys, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.